I'm Alan Dennis, I'm retired, and I like to be busy. So I'm going to get in, I'm a trustee of a charity, of an orphanage over in India, keeps me busy, but also I'm chair of the Caister History and Archaeology Research Group. So that's really just geared on exactly what we're talking about, which is suitable for young people to ask the questions and for older people to guide them. And I'm also vice chair of the Caister Heritage Trust, which is a legal body so that any artefacts, say for example like this on here, is saved for the people of Caister. It only belongs to the community, and that's our job as a trust, is to ensure that it's all looked after, catalogued if we've got space, stored properly if we've got space, but important because like that artefact, if it was in someone's house, clearly they thought it was probably rubbish. They gave it to me and just went, didn't tell me the story. So I have started to try and discover the story. It's a story that the youngsters could try and discover the answer to. There's a job for you. And it will be kept. And maybe in 100, 200 years' time, people will still be able to see this and understand something of what happens to be the First World War, and a really nasty part of the First World War. But the story behind it is another matter. I haven't confirmed everything, so if anyone wants a little job, I can lead them on to where that could come from. And its relationship to Caister. I knew nothing about Caister when I came here 20, 30 years ago. I got sparked because I asked people, I was a teacher, and I was saying, what are you doing about the history? And most people said, we know nothing, we don't do much. So I started to ask. And that's how I started, is just by asking some questions, some simple questions, also trying to sort out fact from fiction. And then as I developed, and then doing what you're doing, recording people by film or just oral, I started to be able to build up a picture and start to sort out the fact from the fiction. And then start to gather things that people didn't know about or had got, which is happening today. I've seen people come here today with some things. I didn't know they'd got things. So for me, that is interesting because it builds up a picture of what actually went on. And that's, the initial question is fine, but you need then to take the story on and try and listen to people, try and relate them to what they've heard. So if I give you an example, people tell me that the Americans were here, probably for a short time. When I ask people about them, most of the people I can ask were children then. So they weren't the adults, and you don't get an adult's perspective of it. But the children used to say to me, and still do, oh, we would take eggs round, all the farming type things, or milk round to the American soldiers, and they would give us sweets. That's fine, that's a good story. Then you ask, well, why were they here? Well, I don't know. It was a secret. So of course that then gets you going, there's got to be a good secret, hasn't there? What's the story behind it? What I discovered, I was talking to someone about Cleethorpes, and they were telling me about the Winter Gardens, which used to be a dance hall there, and they used to go to dances in the wartime. And he said it was always strange that on the floor there were numbers. And he said, I always expected to have a dance where they'd stop the music and the person nearest a number would win a prize. And he said they never did it. The story then develops and you start to discover what was happening with the Americans is they were bringing in parts ready for D-Day. And they were bringing it in on the Humber to the various ports split around. And then they'd got halls all along the Humber Bank where they were putting these parts, and the number is the number of the part, and they were assembling vehicles for D-Day. So then that makes sense. So why were the soldiers in Caister? Very simple when you start to dig, is we've got the Yarborough Woods up here. They were hiding the vehicles and the trucks in the woods, ready for D-Day. Then you listen to other stories, and what you then get is in the woods they had an underground workshop. And when they went off for D-Day, they flooded the workshop and cemented over the entrances. So the next question I've got is, where are they? And I haven't discovered yet. I know which gate to go in. If Lord Yarborough will let me go and look on his estate and start to find it, because of what's there. Okay? So from very simple questions, you start to build up a story. That story can go further. I was interviewing a farmer about the Lincolnshire long-wool sheep. He happened to have fields near to the Yarborough Woods. And suddenly he comes out with a story about they were doing a harvest which was with horses, it wasn't with machines. Second World War, I think machines, but it isn't, it's horses. And he said all of a sudden there was a crashing and a banging and this loud roaring, and out from the woods flew this tank out of control straight for his machinery. He was more worried about his horses than the machinery. And the other thing that shook him was it was a coloured gentleman driving it, and he'd not seen them before around. So can you see, just by a simple story, you get a very interesting story out of it. You need to discover what the past was like, because otherwise it will be lost.